Alhamdulillah, the moment has finally come for a one-on-one between myself, Brother Ibrahim Jaaber, and the living legend, may Allah preserve him and protect him, our dear brother, Mahmoud Abdul Rauf, former NBA superstar, college basketball Hall of Famer, Jersey retired at LSU. And as a freshman at LSU, he broke the freshman scoring record, nearly scoring 1,000 points in a single season. Right? If you don't know basketball, then that might not be amazing to you, but that is something that is very, very difficult to do, to average more than 30 points a game, right, for an entire season. And he followed up that with an average of 27.8 points. Hopefully he's fact checking me, right? His sophomore year. And if you notice, he went down a couple of points. But you should also know that that team had an addition by the name of Shaquille O'Neal. We got the third mic still on? MashaAllah. And after his sophomore season, he entered the NBA draft, and we're going to talk about these things, inshallah, in detail. And he was drafted in the first round as the third pick to the Denver Nuggets. And so with that introduction, I want to ask you, first and foremost, Salamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
And we're going to get it right, inshallah. Right? With all that I mentioned, what would you say is your most prized or your most meaningful accomplishment as a basketball player, and why? This is unscripted, by the way. This is all on the fly, alhamdulillah.
Period. You mean from college, NBA, or?
Yes, yes.
Oof. These are tough. This is a tough question already. I would say at first year at LSU. Breaking, I had no idea what the record was. And I just remember going in that first year, I remember a journalist asking me, what do you want your career to say for itself? And I said, look, if I can average 13.7 assists, I was being humble. My goal, my aspirations were bigger. But sometimes you can't tell people your true goals. They may think you're arrogant. They may try to talk you out of it. But I really wanted to dominate. But I'm also being realistic. I'm a freshman. I'm, 5'11 and a half, 6 feet with shoes on.
They got you 6'1" online.
Yeah, that's false. I'll take it, though. Well, then I would take it. Now I say 5'11 and a half because it's more impressive to do it at a smaller height.
That's true.
But, yeah, my first game was about 13-7, and then after that it was 21, and then after that, coach stopped me in the locker room. He said, look, we need you to score more. I said, Coach, I'll try. Then the third game was 48, then 36, then 53. And it was something that I didn't expect so soon. And so to look back, almost 30 years or more later, when they're shooting so many threes now, and it's still holding, I would say that's the most impressive.
MashaAllah. I can't really see the audience because the lights are glaring in front of us, but I know we have a lot of young people in here. We have a lot of basketball fans. Can we get just a show of hands if the name that I mentioned now is going to ring a bell? Raise your hand if you ever heard the name Steph Curry. All right, some of you are probably wearing his sneakers right now. Right, so Mahmoud, alhamdulillah, walillahi alhamd, right, is still referred to at times as Steph before Steph because of his tenacious offense and his game-changing entrance into the college and also the professional arena, alhamdulillah. And so he was not just an excellent basketball player, but he was a pioneer at his position. right? And they say every hero has a backstory. Every hero has life experiences, things that they go through that actually shape them into the person that they ultimately become, right? You don't just wake up one day and you're that finished product, right? So can you tell us a little bit about those different elements that actually made you into the player and the person that you became when you arrived at LSU? Let's go that far, inshallah.
Well, let me begin first by, I didn't grow up as a Muslim. I grew up as a Christian. My grandmother, my uncle, and my aunt would always teach me about the importance. There's a higher power that you always have to relate to. And so that was the beginning, the middle, and the end for me, because every day it was a point of emphasis for me, even though I wasn't walking the street with my hands up making, what we do as Muslims, dua, but I prayed every day. I prayed when I was walking. I mean, if I was driving the car and I had music on and I passed the church, I would turn the music off. And I was constantly asking God to put me in a position. So this is a part of when I think about reaching that level, because there's a holistic approach to it. It's just not going out and playing basketball. It's the other thing. So I made prayer a central feature of what I did. I prayed a lot, but I prayed for others more than I prayed for myself. And because I was always taught that God will bless you more. But then the more you do it, you actually start just loving doing it. And so those were thinking about my mother, thinking about helping people someday. Those mornings when you don't feel like getting up, because I always say you have to have more than one motivator. Because some days thinking about your mother isn't the strongest. So you got to pull from something else. You got to pull from something else. And
so you mentioned your mother.
Yes.
And thinking about your mother. Did the context that you grew up in, did that also play a part in specifically, being inclined and driven to highlight your mother in your prayers and just in your motivation and your efforts? No
question. Thinking about my mother on a consistent basis, we grew up poor. I had two brothers, and a major goal of mine was to get my mother and put her in a position where she didn't have to worry financially anymore, get her out the ghetto. And so that mostly every morning motivated me. Wanting to be great and what comes with that. But it was more so, there's this saying that if you want to find yourself, lose yourself in the service of others. I really believe that, so, and I also believe that if I'm just thinking about myself, Brother Jaaber, it's easy to quit because you're not thinking about there's no, the weight of your family is not, or anybody else is not on your shoulders. So I can quit, no problem. But it's harder to quit when you're putting all of that on your back.
No.
And so that got me up. And then, of course, just by the grace and mercy of Allah, man, at 9, 10 years old, who's waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning? And I knew it was God, Allah, because I talk to people even now at 50-something years old, and I can't find anyone that said they were waking up that early in the morning to go hoop. And it could be thunder and lightning. It could be cold. I would come home with frostbitten hands. Man, I would be out there. I mean, it looked like a tornado's about to fall out the sky. It didn't matter. I was so determined to be successful. But it was those things that was pushing me. And also just growing up with Tourette syndrome.
Yes. Which brings me to my next...
We'll get into it. But
right.
Every single day and then having inspirations, you have to have people that you look up to. And for me at that time, it was Dr. J. I don't know if the younger generation know Dr. J or Julius Erving, but I just loved the way he carried himself. I love, how stylish he was when he played. And I would watch the game religiously. And I would watch more NBA than I would watch college because I'm saying, these are the best guys. This is who I have to learn from.
Yeah.
And I would also play against older people. Like I'm in the 4th grade playing against high school and college guys. And they saw something in me and they started giving me the rock. So all of those guys,
What was that turning point though? So you're working hard, you're getting up, you are going out in the morning early, whether it's raining or snowing, you're still out there. What was that moment where you felt like, okay, I'm just knocking on the door right now?
I was in elementary school.
You was in elementary school.
We played, it was 2 games in particular. We lost both, but one game we lost, it was 43 to 45 or 46. I had 42 of our 43 points. And one game was 36 to 42. We lost and I had all 36. So I almost beat the team.
The other team.
And I said, well, you know, man, this, and it felt easy. And I said, I'm on to something. And when I went to when I was in high school, this is another one. I was invited to the Princeton Nike camp, New Jersey.
Here in New Jersey, okay.
And I was going into the 11th, I believe. I went 2 years in a row. And there was a scout. He was the toughest scout in the history at the time, never giving anyone a 5. That was his highest score. In 2 years, he gave me a 5. Well, going into my 11th grade high school year, Michael Jordan was there.
Okay.
I know y'all know Michael Jordan. And
you know the guy that's better than LeBron? That guy? Okay.
Yeah, you started something. And 110 people in the nation who they say were the top players in the nation were invited. And that year, I'm on the bottom of the bleachers. He's so close, I can literally touch him. So he's talking to us. And out of all the people in the audience, he asked me to come out on the basketball floor. And he gives me the ball. He said, I want you to come at me with everything you have, and I'm going to try to stop you. I said, okay. And I remember getting the ball, and I gave him a jab step, and I took left. Jab, I went, he was coming for it. I laid it up. The crowd went crazy. Afterwards, I'm thinking it's over. He gives it to me again. And, you're taught not to set it up like you're going to do the same thing, give him the same look. So I'm leaning like I'm a jab. I go between my legs. I lean. He bites for it. I cross him over. I lay him up on the other side. It comes out of the hoop. He asks me for the ball back, and he tells me to go sit down. And I can remember, like yesterday, man, I'm sitting there, and I'm having this conversation with myself. I'm like, man, I just scored on Michael Jordan twice. And I said, it was easy. And I said, I can't wait to get home and tell my friends. So that right there.
And you was in high school.
I said, man, whatever I'm doing, because I used to play in different weather, like the cold and the rain and the thunder, the heat. And I would imagine 2-3 different individual people playing against me. They were always this close to the basketball. And I'm trying to escape. Escape my imagination. Because imagination is the strongest thing you have. Right? If I can create space with my imagination, and I'm thinking about them hitting me and everything. I'm going up. I'm doing this. I'm by myself. So I'm saying if I can escape my imagination, this is my mindset as a child. If I can escape my imagination, 2-3 individual people, no human being can stay with me like your imagination can. And I think that's why when I played Jordan that time, it felt so easy. When I scored those 2 buckets. Now, I didn't guard him. He asked me for the ball back, but I knew, I said, man, whatever I'm doing, I got to even do more of it. Because I worked to the point of, and just to talk about it now, you make me teary-eyed, but it was only by Allah that I was saved, because probably 90-some% of the times I trained, which we'll get to the Tourette's, I had near-death experiences because I couldn't stop until it felt right.
And yeah, so for you, thinking about everything you did up until that point, playing in high school and then going into college, and all the while you are suffering with Tourette syndrome. And just reflecting on that earlier, I would say that perhaps that was one of your superpowers, right? But did you always feel like that? And tell us a little bit about your experience with Tourette's and how that impacted you and made you into the player and the person that you are.
Thank you for the question. To answer the second question first, I didn't always feel like that.
Can we define Tourette's syndrome?
Well, Tourette's is a neurological disorder. The way I explain it, it's your mind and your nervous system on two different wavelengths. And you're trying to create a balance. So if something doesn't feel right, you have to keep doing it till it feels like if I pop my neck and it doesn't feel right, I have to keep popping it until it feels right. And it from the moment you wake up to the moment you're going to sleep, you're trying to negotiate with Tourette's syndrome just to create a balance. It could be something that's getting out of a chair, don't feel right, and you got to keep. So it would literally take me sometimes 45 minutes to 50 minutes just to get out the house. I'm on the way to the basketball court, I'm dribbling. If I mess up 2-3 times and I'm headed in this direction, I got to back up 10 steps where I came. And I got to, whatever move I did, I have to do it to the right and I have to do it to the left, same speed. And I can't mess up 2-3 times on the way. So that may take me 40-something minutes. I get to the basketball court, I work out about an hour and a half, 2 hours. Afterwards, I had a drill, Tourette's syndrome. After that hour and a half, it said, you got to make 10 shots. All of them have to be net, no rim. There's no glitches. Any glitch I had before taking that shot doesn't count. It had to be 10 shots while you're tired. And so
in a row?
In a row. So I could have, when I say no rim, none. And you go, you're tired. And if you stop, you cheat, you start over. So you had to go through it. I could be 9 in a row. That 10th shot goes in, but it skims the rim. I couldn't retake the 10th shot and say 10. I had to start back at 0. That may take an hour and a half. I finish, I'm on my way off the court. I mess up 3 times, I'm walking. I got to back up 10 steps. I'm back underneath the goal. And the conscious shoot it. You're like, oh man, I don't want to, but you got to. And 90-something% of the time when I would shoot it, it wouldn't feel right. I'd have to do that drill. After that first hour and a half, that 10-shot drill, I had to do twice. I don't know if you ever worked out so hard where you can't catch your breath. And finally you catch your tears coming out because you felt, man, I could have died. I couldn't catch my breath because you're working so hard. So I had to devise a strategy that after that 10-shot drill, all net, when it came out the hoop, I would throw it towards my house. So when I finally got it and I'm dribbling, I mess up. When I back up, I'm not under the goal. Because else I would have probably been there 3 times. And so that was like every single day. So I agree. At the time, my grandmother told me, I didn't have the concept of a superpower, but she did tell me when I was young, she said, baby, she said, God gives every one of us a strength. And also we have weaknesses, but he gives us strengths to overcome that weakness. You just got to find out what it is. And I really believe that, yeah, Tourette's it's a monster, man. Like the minute you wake up, you constantly just little stuff, And it used to be so vicious and violent, man. It felt like I would pop my elbow. It would feel like, man, I'm about to dislocate my elbow. I would pop my neck so hard till I could feel my brain feel like it was hitting my skull, and I'm tensing up. You're doing this while you playing in between plays. So it's taking your breath. So this was every single day. And so I would cry, wake up some mornings, man, I'm like, I don't feel like doing this because I knew what I'd have to put my body through. But it was like that, I gotta do it because this is the only thing I got.
So there was that desperation, that
life or death.
Life or death, do or die.
This is life or death, which it's a beautiful thing because you put your body through that much abuse and your mind. When you get on the basketball court, you might be smiling, but you're trying to kill.
Yeah.
You're like, I'm not going to do this to myself and take a back seat when I'm in front of my opponent. So some beautiful things came out.
So are you the player at LSU, and are you the player who earned a most improved player, I believe, in your second or third season, and you were all rookie team, and you was an all-star, and you competed in the dunk contest. Are you that player without Tourette syndrome?
No. Tourette, am I that player without Tourette syndrome? No. Would I have been a good player, I think? Yes. I'm often asked if you have the option not to have Tourette. I really believe that Allah doesn't give us a burden that we can't bear. And He gives us what we have in order to elevate us and make us better. We may not understand it fully then, but my answer to them now, I said, man, it's so enticing to want to know what it feels like not to have Tourette syndrome. But I've seen it takes me long to read, right? It takes me long to do certain things. But once I do it, I got it. So this is my answer. Tourette's has taken me where I myself would not have gone without it.
Reminds me of the verse in Surah Yusuf where Allah Ta'ala says, He afflicts with His mercy whomsoever He wills. So sometimes the blessings of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, they come in the form of what we may perceive to be a burden, but when we actually go all the way through it in the end, we see, oh, all of this had to happen in order for me to actually achieve something greater than I would have been able to achieve just by my own will.
That's right.
Alhamdulillah. So moving forward, how does Chris Jackson become Mahmoud Abdul Rauf? Tell us about that journey to Islam.
I believe Allah was planting seeds. I remember growing up, I usually always go to the autobiography. But even before the autobiography, I remember in Biloxi, Mississippi, because I grew up in Gulfport mostly. I spent a year in Biloxi. I would see this Muslim family. I didn't know they were Muslim then. But now, sister wearing hijab, children. And every day whatever I was doing, I would see them. And something would make me stop. And I just watched them until they went into the house, right? Every time I saw them. But then I remember watching Roots.
Okay.
The scenes, Kutun Kinte, Salamu Alaikum, blah, 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 blah. And then the Islamic Revolution happened when I was, 79. I've seen images of that. But at LSU, my college coach gave me the autobiography of Malcolm.
Okay.
And I was already going through questioning my faith at the time. Had a lot of questions. And
is that why he gave it to you, or?
No, actually, I asked him some years later. I said, why did you give that?
Who was your coach, by the way?
Dale Brown at LSU. Brown. I said, why did you give that to me, coach? He paused. He said, I don't know. I said, do you think it's because, because he would always talk about me being from Mississippi. And he talked about my character, but he also felt I was too passive on things. Because he had to stop me in a couple of interviews. Hey, man, tell him how you feel. Because he knew.
So he tried to ignite a fire in you.
He said, it's possible. It's possible. So, but I told him not too long ago, I said, out of all the things, the freedom that you allowed me to have at LSU and all of that, I said, man, that's irrelevant compared to you giving me the autobiography. I'm indebted to you forever just for you giving me that book.
And when he's talking about the autobiography, he's actually talking about the autobiography of
Hajj Malik Shabazz, Malcolm X.
Malcolm X, yeah. Rahimahullah. And tell us about that experience reading the autobiography of Malcolm, how that impacted you.
Growing up in Mississippi, you growing up in the dynamics, especially at that time in the 70s, how whites and blacks relationships was, and seeing your families take a back seat and become very submissive in front of white folks. And I always say your environment has a way of molding and shaping you.
Yes.
And I began to feel that same thing, like a nervousness when I saw something I didn't like or I wanted to confront something, because this is what I would see them doing, generationally. But I knew it didn't. I said, you know what? I don't like the way this feels. This doesn't feel natural. But I didn't know how to get out of it. I'm young. And so after reading Malcolm and just listening to not only how eloquent he was, but one of the things that stood out to me the most is just how courageous he was. Like, he didn't seem to fear no one. And just like he spoke his I said, man, and I'm competitive. When I see something, I'm a people's watcher. I go And I watch people because I'm always trying to see some qualities like, I don't have that. I want that. I want that. You know what I mean? And I said, man, I want that. I want to be like that. And so what it did was it caused me to take steps toward learning how to tell people no and sitting with that discomfort, what it feels like, and say, okay, it didn't kill me. Like anything, if you want to be great at it, the more you practice, you get better. And so it went from one thing, then I started to have a little dialogue because I was that guy that sat in the back of the class, didn't want to raise my hands, don't ask me anything. I'm memorizing my way through school. I'm not trying to learn anything. Now I'm reading Malcolm. I'm like, man, I'm really trying to learn. I'm trying to have dialogue, see what people think. And again, it was a natural progression. I get to Denver. I meet this guy. And I was still professing to be a Christian. That's all I knew. And one day in the home, Islam came up in conversation. He said, I met this brother at the airport. He said, we can go to the masjid. I said, let's go. So we went, picked up the Quran, came back.
This is now when you're in the NBA.
I'm in the NBA now, my first year. And I was so excited because even though I read the autobiography, I never picked up the Quran. And so I can't remember the pages, but I remember to this day how it made me feel. And I read 2 to 3 pages, and all the questions I had, I was my witness. After reading those 2, 3 pages, I looked up across that table at that brother. I said, man, I don't know about you. My search is over. I'm going to be a Muslim. He said, well, I'm going to be a Muslim. So I started going to the masjid, talking to the brothers. And then that summer, I embraced Islam. And I remember somebody asked me, they said, what is it about Islam that attracts you? Right? Why you that keeps you into being a Muslim and so on. So I said, listen, from the first day I read the Quran and I engaged it, not just reading it, engaged it. I said, until today, it's never ceased to satisfy my curiosity and answer my questions. Never. And that's the feeling that I continue to have. Until and so that's nothing like it.
SubhanAllah. So Malcolm obviously is one of your heroes, and I see that there's a similarity in his transformation and yours, is that it began with reading. When Malcolm was in prison, he read the entire dictionary. He copied it word for word. He read every book in the library. Then they moved him to another prison, and he read every book in that particular library. He didn't just become Malcolm X, the eloquent speaker. He didn't just become Hajj Malik. Right. But over time, through reading and researching, that actually transformed him inward, internally first, and even this goes back to just the origins of our tradition. The first thing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he did with Adam alayhi salam, وَعَلَّمَ آدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا, right? That he taught Adam the names of all things, So intelligence is our crown as the human beings, and we're elevated through our intellect and our intelligence. And perhaps that is one of the reasons why the very first verse that descended was the command to the human being to iqra, to read, right? Because through reading we become refined, right? And you are what I would say a man of many quotes. And I love to hear you pull out those different quotes. Is there any quote that you live by?
There's a whole bunch of Quranic quotes.
Just give us 1 or 2 gems.
There's one that I mention a lot that resonates with me about George Washington Carver. He says, no one has the right to come into this world and go out of it without leaving behind distinct and legitimate reasons for having passed through it. So, Allah has given us so much, right? Allah says we can't enumerate the blessings that he gives us. And so who are we, right? And we don't have the luxury, right, to waste what Allah gives us. So I think about that all the time. It ties into wal asr innal insana lafi khusr, right? It's just, I'd have to start talking. There's one that Huey P. Newton in his book, Revolutionary Suicide, he's talking about the difference between reactionary and revolutionary suicide. In other words, giving your life for a cause Man, when I heard him say this, it resonated with me. He said, it's not us giving our life a cause. And he said, it's not that we have a death wish. He said, it's quite the opposite. Is that we have such a desire to live with peace and dignity that the existence without it is impossible. And so I think about people like that, and, the thought that, the feeling and the thought and the mind that came behind that, and things like that just resonates with me. Yeah, it's like what I think Martin Luther King said, the arc of history is long, but it always bends towards justice. Right, so I really love stuff. I really love stuff like that. Because,
so you see why I call him a man of many quotes.
Yeah, because the Quran, that's the Quran is always pushing us towards justice.
Yes.
Yeah, mashallah.
Right. So now you're Muslim. You took your Shahada, and you're in the NBA. Mm-hmm. All right. How was your early transition? For example, being a professional basketball player, one of the seasons that came around every year was Ramadan. And you fasting and you're training and they have expectations on you. Mm-hmm. How was that experience for you, just being a Muslim now in that type of space?
It's tough, but it's beautiful because, a lot of people profess to be something. And when I first became a Muslim, there was this air of, okay, are you Muslim? Okay. And I think it's because how many people say they're Christians and they're Muslims, but you don't necessarily hear it and see it.
Live up to it.
Right. So it wasn't a problem in the beginning. But when they saw me having dialogue, I carry with me Ahmed Didat, VHS tapes around. Yeah, I don't know if a lot of you know, but VHS, older people do. So I would have the books and the VHS, and so I'm using this material. We having dialogue, and I'm reading all this other stuff because my best education came when I was in NBA. Almost every city I went to, I'm grateful to those brothers, man. I don't know how people find out where the hotel is that we staying at, but almost every hotel I went to, every city, when I pick up my per diem and the stuff at the desk, Assalamu alaikum, you hear him in the corner. I turn around, hey, Assalamu alaikum, brother. And at that time, I'm a people's person. So if I felt good about you, it was a normal practice of mine. I invite brothers to the room. And we didn't have a plane the first year or two. So we would stay up 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, just talking out all the room service, and we talking. And so many people have different disciplines. Some may be good in sociology. Some may be good in fiqh, in tafsir. Some may be good. And they would introduce me material and authors. And so I'd go get them because there was a Muslim brother in Denver owned a bookstore called Salam Books, Bashir.
Okay. And
I was sitting in his bookstore for hours and I probably ordered every book he had on the shelf. And so when they saw that, man, I'm engaging people, I'm praying before the game. I'm in, we had a tight little closet where the equipment was, and the locker room was right here. So I go in there, man, the coach in there talking. I'm in there, offering salah, coming out. People are coming to my room, staying up late at night. I'm not going clubbing. I'm not having women in the place, right? So now you're not a part of the country club environment. And so they said, hey, he's kind of taking this thing a little bit too serious, right? And then, because I would see the coaches, we'll be on the plane, and I'm going to give you the back part of the coach's head. So everybody's doing their thing, and here go me. I'm starting to engage people in conversation. Soon as the conversation starts, everybody doing whatever. As soon as they hear the conversation, this is the coach's head. They say, here you go again. Right? So that's when it became an issue. And people started to nitpick.
What gave you the confidence, just being a new Muslim, to really begin to dialogue with people? You went from somebody who was shy. Obviously, you read the autobiography of Malcolm, but you're still fresh into Islam. What gave you the confidence?
That's a great question. You said it earlier. One thing you said was, I began to read more. You know, and I believe, this is what I believe. The more that you read and you engage it, at some point, you know, you can't hold it. There's this urge to share it. And when you share it, you realize that a lot of people, Muslim, non-Muslim, think similar thoughts than you. And what that does, it leads to confidence. You share more. Then as you're doing it, the confidence, you become like what Allah says in the Quran, don't be like a donkey with books on your back. You got all this, now what you gonna do with it? So now, the more you start seeing, well, a lot of people think the same way and you're moving in that way, let me up the ante. And so you develop courage, right? And so that was the process for me. I'm like, okay, you know, it's like, I think the story when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells Ibrahim to go and build the house and call people. He said, well, Allah ain't nobody. I ain't tell you that. I'm responsible for who hears it. So my thing, whatever I get, whatever knowledge that I'm blessed, it could be a little bit. I'm not that, I stopped having that mindset. Sometimes we think, well, you know, I got to know almost everything or everything before I move. No, you never going to know everything. Whatever little bit I got, I'm going to share it and Allah will show me the rest. And as I started to take that process and I'm seeing the response, it just, you know what, and then I'm reading. I really believe there's a reason when Allah says, be in the company of the righteous, right? Or don't take as your bitana, your inner clique, people who, because the more you associate, whether it's reading and with people, you develop. I'm reading Malcolm. I'm reading about Patrice Lumumba. I'm reading about the Prophet's life, right? I'm reading the Cedar. I'm reading it. I mean, almost anything you can put in my hand. I'm reading Noam Chomsky, Gore Vidal, Randall Robinson, Arundhati Roy, and they're talking about some stuff, right? I'm like, man. And so the more you're consuming, the more you're in those environments, it changes you. My heroes change. It was Dr. J, no offense. Nice dude. It was those guys. But now as I began to read, it's thinkers, right? It's people who took positions. And I can see, like, when I was young, I'm trying to be the greatest basketball player. And I started to notice, I'm like, you know what? This is cool. But if I die tomorrow and the only thing a person remembers of me is, man, he had a crossover. He could score his butt off. I got a wasted life. What do you want your life to say for itself? Do you want to be like them, these people that took positions? Or do you want to be like that? And so all of those things change. I couldn't see doing anything else. I say, hey, man, and I started practicing. You know, Islam tells us to focus on death. It brings you closer to Allah. Not in a morbid way, but contemplate, because life is short. Yeah. And so just like I envisioned players on the court, I would do, even now, 54, I make myself look at images. I make myself look at images that are gruesome. I make myself, you know, I make myself look at people that's impoverished, and I internalize it, just like I internalize those opponents. And so today, you know, I usually say this sometimes when I'm speaking. I got a little skit. You know, Muslims, we hear somebody dying. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Oh man, may Allah, you know, give them, you know, highest stages of paradise. Maybe a sentence, and they would say, hey man, you want to go shoot some pool later? Like, but me, I'm like, you know what? Man, that person died. How was their soul? And who did they leave behind? If it was a man, was he the sole breadwinner? And how many children he left behind? How are they going to be affected? Because there's a generational
impact.
You know what I mean? So I'm thinking about not just that, and so I make myself look at these images. I was doing that in the league. I would take the Lion of the Desert, the Messenger, Battle of Algiers, and I had this videotape of the war in Chechnya where they showed, body parts blown up. And I would look at those videos before games. And I'm internalizing them. And because I wasn't there and I couldn't go there, and this is to keep me connected and focused, and not to ever allow me to become desensitized to suffering, ever. I think that's I think it's
Everything you saying is still echoing right now,
right.
mashallah.
You know, so I would look at those videos and I'm on the court and I shake you, hey, have a good game. But in my heart, I'm like, I'm imagining you're the reason why we're going through the suffering we're going through. In order for me to get justice, I gotta annihilate you tonight on this basketball court. And so
40.
I've been doing that. This is how.
No.
And so after a while, you're like, hey man, look, life is short. We're gonna live, we're gonna die. Death is a creation, you know, fear none but Allah. And I'm constantly telling myself this every day.
And so with that self-refinement, development, your aspirations grew and your purpose expanded, right? And basketball, as you said, became a smaller part of that framework of your life, which ultimately leads us to the next question. So after I personally left basketball, taking my own little stance, nothing compared to what you did, mashallah, I was asked in a format that compared my decision to that of Colin Kaepernick. And I responded to the reporter that Colin Kaepernick, he took a decision, obviously, to kneel and not stand for the American flag. But the decision that he made, he could easily anticipate thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of people that would agree with the stance that he took, right? But the stance that I took and the stance that you took and not standing for the flag at that time, I don't imagine that you imagine you would have a lot of people in your corner, especially in the celebrity space that is the NBA. Can you tell us a little bit about that experience?
Yeah, and I agree with you. Where do I begin?
What was the statement that you were making when you did not stand for the flag? So before the basketball game starts, they have the national anthem.
Right.
And this is not just for basketball, football, and other sports as well.
I real quick, I began to read about global, like foreign policy, domestic policy and stuff I hadn't come across up until then. And I started seeing that there's a system behind why, you know, things are the way they are. And I started to see the hypocrisy in what you say this is supposed to represent and what it really does for a lot of people, especially black people and people of color, technically, even white people, even women, right? And I said, you know, and then I'm reading, you know, and what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, he didn't put in a human being two hearts. You can't be for justice and injustice at the same time. I'm reading the stories of the Prophet ﷺ. You know, when they offered him all of these things to endorse the system, right? He said, if you put the sun in my right hand and the moon in my left, right? I wouldn't denounce or stop this until Allah brings victory or I die in the process. I'm thinking about the story when the Quraysh, who was a superpower at the time in that little region, asked him to just recognize the system, this corrupt system, just with the gesture of your finger. He wouldn't even give the gesture of his finger. And here I am standing for a flag, especially with the third stanza in the history of this nation. I'm like, I can't do it. And so I just, for like months of the previous year, towards the end of the year, I just decided, you know, I'm just gonna not stand for it. And then someone caught wind of it. They wanted to ask me a question. The assistant GM came, he said, a radio personality saw what you understand, you wanna talk? I said, we talk about this stuff all the time, on the bus, on the plane. So I ain't really see no big deal in it. And so I gave him an interview. The next day, we're playing Shaquille O'Neal in McNichols Arena in Denver. I see, man, so many journalists. I'm thinking they're there for Shaq. And beeline right to me. And they said, and the first question they asked, so what do you think about the flag? I said, it's a symbol. I think it's a symbol of tyranny and oppression. I said, am I saying everything in America is bad? No, there's good that exists. But wherever the bad is, as a Muslim, even if it's in Saudi Arabia, we don't stand for it. And I told him, I said, we can't be for oppression and justice at the same time. You have to make a choice, right? But of course, they focus on tyranny, oppression. Didn't give breath to the whole statement. And I thought it was a balanced statement. And then after that, I'm coming back to the arena. I get a call. I'm walking into the locker room. Bernie, the trainer says, Bernie, the general manager wants to see you. I go down. He said, the NBA wants to fine you. If you don't stand, what do you say? I said, I'm not standing. He said, well, they want to talk to you. Some people from the NBA, I wish I knew their name. For some reason, I'm thinking it was probably Silver was on one of them because he was right-hand man of David Stern. At the time. Because it was two of his closest people. And as I'm on the phone with him, I don't know why they felt a need to identify their religion, but they were trying to convince me to stand. And they said, we're Jewish. And then I wish I could remember the analogy they gave me, but they gave me an analogy. And as they finished, I was polite. I listened. I said, well, I appreciate the fact that you wanted to share that with me. I said, but there's only one issue or two issues. I said, I'm not Jewish, and that example don't apply to me. And I said, I'm not standing. And then they said, and then Bernie looked at me. They were like, well, okay. And so he got off the phone. I'd never been suspended in my life. I'm thinking it's going to be an act of Congress. It's going to take weeks, you know. And I said, can I go get ready to play the nice game? He said, no. I said, I'm fine right now. I mean, I'm suspended right now. He said, yeah. I said, well, can I go and sit in the stands and support the team? He said, no. They don't even want you on the premises. So I went home. Before I even got home, it seemed like it was global. It was global. And I ended up coming back. I didn't want to come back.
You were an all-star at that time.
No, that's another thing. They said that they said if the votes for the all-star games stop tomorrow, if they stop today, they said I would be a starting guard for the all-star team. Tomorrow is the last day the votes come in. I'm not even on the all-star team. You know what I mean? But a part of me didn't care. Like most of me didn't care because I really wanted my time off. I didn't want to be around that environment. You know, the all-star, I mean, it's a lot in that environment. I was literally like, part of me was happy. I'm like, I don't want to go anyway. Right? But yeah.
And so that's the stance that changed the trajectory of your career.
Yeah, very much. They suspended me, but then there was a guy that I value that I've been knowing for years, an imam in D.C., among other people, but he in particular ended up telling me a story. And I was so mad at him because, you know, you're angry. You just want to go out and just say what you got to say. But also, you know, there's a concept that as a Muslim, if you see something better, you do that, you know. And he was telling me about an example. He said, look, you can take this position and it's honorable. You could take this other position, it's also honorable. It's your choice. And he was telling you, you could use this as a platform either way, but if you're still in the league with the visibility the league has. But he gave me the story of the Prophet ﷺ when they saw a Jewish funeral procession passing by. And the Prophet stood up. And the companion was like, why, oh Prophet ﷺ, why did you stand? We're at war with them. He says, I didn't stand for their cause. I stood because Allah gave a life and he took a life away. He says, so you could stand, but it not be for the cause that America say, what America stands for. And you can pray for those who are oppressed. You can use this. Man, I was mad at him because I was angry, but I was mad because it made sense. And I was mad too because I knew if I came back, they gonna say, you compromised. As soon as I came back, you don't understand how when reporters would come to me, I said, absolutely not. I said, as a Muslim, we see something better, we do that. This is why I came back. I said, I feel the same way, if not more, that I felt about America before. I had to make sure I amplified it. No. So look, I'm not gonna take a backseat. I'm not gonna soft pedal through this. So, yeah.
I've often heard you say that if you had the choice between being respected, and being liked, that you would choose respect over being liked. How much, how important do you think it is for self-image and self-value to be a principled person, to have those non-negotiable principles in place that kind of direct you and help navigate you through life?
It's everything. I mean, principles is everything. I think about the verse in Quran, and I don't know the Arabic, when Allah says, why do you say that which you don't do? Hateful is it in the sight of Allah that you say that which you don't do. And for me, I mean, we have scholars obviously in here, but what registered in my mind was that it seems like the doing should precede the saying. Or should be simultaneous. If I say something to somebody 1,000,000 times, if they don't see me doing it, they'll never believe me. But I can be quiet and just do and don't say a thing. That's gonna speak volumes. It's like, I think we talked about this the other day. I think there's a saying by Waldo Emerson. Is it the one, wherever you go there, okay, he got so many. I'm losing my train of thought right now. Where you go, there you are. I can't think of it anyway. But
it'll come back and
yeah, but I think, I really think this. I think that, even when you look at the prophet's life, right, his character, and then when he spoke, it goes, there's nothing, it's everything. Your character is everything. There's a saying that your thoughts influence your behavior forms your character, and your character determines your fate. People are gonna remember those things more than so much just your words. Just being consistent or persistent or persevering every single day.
So you were more
it's
content,
priceless.
Giving up the fame, the celebrity, the fortune, and sticking to your principles. Your principles were more valuable to you than anything they could have offered you.
There's nothing like it. The peace that you feel, being able to sleep. As a young boy, you see things, and like just in our life, we see things. In your heart, not even in your heart, I mean, you just know. You know how people say in the deep down, you don't have to go that deep. If you saw something and it was wrong and you should have said something and you didn't, Waldo Emerson said, wherever you go, there you are. You can lie to people, you can run from, but you can't run from yourself. You were a coward. You should have said something and did something. And so when you start doing, and you also know, man, I've been here before. I done shot this jumper in front of me. I done shot a jumper with a hand I done been hit in my gut, and have to fight back. Man, you know what? I've had people not like what I say, not like, you know what I mean? That becomes literally, you don't even think about that no more. It's about, you know what, man, if I believe I'm on the right footing, the right track, my heart goes out to you that you don't see it that way. But lakum dinakum wali. Muslims know that one. That's what, lakum, serious, till you be your way to me be mine. Out of respect.
Yes.
And so you get to that point, right? That as a young boy, it would prick my conscience, man. It would be hard for me to sleep because man, you just let that opportunity pass you by. You ain't as tough as you say you are. You weak.
Yeah.
You a coward. I don't like to. And sometimes we gotta call ours. We have to have self-talk, not just positive. Yeah. Like you a chump. You ain't do nothing. I do that to myself. I don't just, you can be this, you can be that. I call myself out.
And you should be the
come
first
on, man.
one.
You got to go and handle that. You got to go address that.
4 minutes left on the clock. All right, one-on-one with Mahmoud, Abdul, Rauf, and Ibrahim Jaaber. Who's winning? Who's winning? MashaAllah. We do have the basketball camp tomorrow. If you haven't registered, I'm sorry, registration is closed, and there will be no walk-ins whatsoever. We're not doing relationship, friendship, any of that. We can't do that, MashaAllah. So we haven't spoke about this documentary, Stand, right, which was centered around the stance that you took as an NBA player. Tell us what that documentary actually meant to you after everything that you sacrificed and gave up for the sake of Islam, and cliffhanger for the second part of the question, inshallah.
When it was being shown. But you know what? Jocelyn Rose, Muslim sister, she did a great job directing the film. One of the few people that oftentimes in my history, when people come and they ask you questions, and once you give them all the answers or some of the answers, they go back and they don't call you. They just do their own thing. She kept coming back to me, hey, Mahmoud, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? Would you like this? Would you like that? So she really got me involved with the process, and I appreciate her for that.
And it got picked up by Showtime.
Yeah. Showtime picked it up. I've had my story butchered for so long. People will take it and they'll do their own thing with it. This was I didn't have any complaint. Obviously, you can't put your whole life in there. There are things that's not gonna make the cut, just like in a book. But everything she put in there, it was I was pleased with it. But I think one of the problems was it also, I'm gonna save that one for the next question. But I was very pleased with it. It dealt with a lot.
Yeah.
And actually, and I told her, I said, listen, man, I'm an open book. I can be as raw as you want me to be. Because I think when you tell a story, you tell it.
Yeah.
And that was my attempt. That's what I tried to do. I think our first sit down was for about 11 hours. We talked for 11 hours. And then I think I had about 3 more. And she did a phenomenal job. And she captured a lot of Islam.
Yes.
In it.
Yeah. I've watched it several times. I actually have a program called Level Up that I do with my high school and college youth. And we had 2 sessions just watching the documentary and having dialogue surrounding it, and a few of them made an attempt to actually come here today, specifically because through that experience, they were connected to your story and they want to meet you, of course. Inshallah.
I want to meet them too.
Inshallah. So the second part of the question is obviously during your career, you were blackballed and kind of pushed out, forced out, indirectly or behind the scenes. Other reasons were put forth and you dealt with that. You survived that. And then now you produce this documentary where your story is coming out and many of people are giving you your flowers. People are saying how they messed up. They should have spoke up for you and so forth and so on. And then now the documentary, after gaining so much traction, was taken down. Do you have that feeling of deja vu?
No question. I'm not surprised whatsoever. A sister said something to me at an engagement that I had one time. I didn't even think about it in this way. She said, Mahmoud, one of the reasons I think they put it down. I said, why? She said, the documentary humanized you. Right?
Wow.
Because it's easy sometimes, this is this guy, he's this, in a negative way. Because it showed some things that, some people hadn't seen. And so what happened was, and then the NBA also was making it sort of, you got to buy the footage. And then they try to impose certain things. I said, no. I said, listen, we ain't doing that. I said, then don't use the footage, but put a write-up. When the documentary comes up, put a write-up saying the NBA speaks about how progressive it is and ... But they didn't want to have a write-up. You don't forget that footage. You don't need that footage. But then they ended up working something out. Showtime was sold to Paramount. So NBA's transaction is already done. People don't know this. I'm telling this audience this. I reached out to Steven Spinoza for Showtime. I said, hey, what's happening with the documentary, blah, blah, blah. He said, hey, this type of thing happens. He said, he mentioned the NBA in the text, that the NBA is involved, something dealing with the transfer. I'm like, the NBA shouldn't have anything to do with it. So make a long story short, people in the industry said that what's happening, this is unheard of. And even Jocelyn, who has Jewish heritage, family, Muslim sister, she said, Mahmoud, she even mentioned, she's in the industry. So people in the industry, you got to listen to them. But with all, especially now too, with all the stuff happening, dehumanizing them, you got all these players saying this, and there's a lot of pressure on the NBA. With Kyrie, what was happening with Kyrie.
Yeah.
So there's a lawyer on it right now. He's looking into it. They cover these cases, and he said that we do these cases. He said this is unheard of. They ended up sending me a one-page contract. I never had a one-page contract. So there's some fishy business going on, and they're not responding now. And I'm hoping that the NBA have their hand in it, because he said that if the NBA has their hand in it, after all of these years, then we can go back and open up a case, because it shows that they're constantly trying to sabotage you. Because why should they even be involved with Showtime documentary? Showing me. So, and then they said it was their best documentary ever, sports documentary. Showtime said it was the best documentary they had.
No doubt.
Now, why would you, if you're in the business of selling, why would you take it off?
Wow.
Yeah, so it's a lot going on. So I'm not surprised, man. Everything happens in its own time. But
So last double question, inshallah. Number one, with everything going on in terms of atrocities, injustices, around the world, visible and vivid on social media, what do you think should be the place of people in the NBA today? We have Muslim personalities in the NBA. We have non-Muslim personalities. What do you think that they should be doing, number one? And number two, when it's all said and done, what do you want the legacy of Mahmoud Abdul Rauf to be in the end?
I forget the imam that was speaking earlier, and the exact words that he used, but we all know the famous hadith that if you see an injustice, change it with your hands. If you can't speak out about it, if you can't feel it in your heart. And everybody's in different spaces, right? But I think definitely something needs. So you asked me about the NBA. Some people are not comfortable with speaking, but they have wealth, and they can support people who do speak, or they can support things. Find some way, right? And I'm not saying they aren't. Find some way to be involved. But this is just my humble opinion. The NBA is great for pulling athletes in to speak on causes that they support, right? They talk about how progressive they are. They allow their players to speak. But there's examples, if you have the right politics. There's a case when James Harden and Westbrook was in China, the Uyghur situation. Yeah. Right after they talking about how progressive they are, then they were about to speak. Somebody in the NBA shut them up. Don't say anything. I guess y'all not as, you don't allow them to speak. So it depends on what you're standing for. And I did a post about it when I heard about it a while back, just trying to encourage, like, look, man, in particular, Muslim athletes. I mean, we can be the strongest people on the basketball court. We can try to overcome our opponent. We can do all of this stuff. At some point, we got to take risks. We got to say something. And it's just not, at some point, it's just not enough. This is just my humble opinion. It's just not enough just to pray about it. I'm not minimizing prayer. And I'm saying that in this context. You know, I said this not too long ago. Frederick Douglass said he prayed for freedom for 20 years and never received an answer until he started praying with his legs. Right? And every time you look in the Quran, when Allah, you know, even the Surah Al-Ma'un, that do you see those who lie about this deen? They push the orphan away. They don't encourage the feeding of the needy. Misery to those who are like robots in their prayer. They're just going up and down, right? Their hearts are disconnected. You know, so these are the most vulnerable people on the face of the earth, the orphans and the needy. It's almost as if though Allah is telling us, look, if you neglect your responsibility, you push them away, you don't encourage. That's a vocal thing too. Yeah. You don't encourage, man, you're giving lip service to your attachment to Islam. Your prayers aren't benefiting you. You know what I mean? Because that your prayer should motivate you.
Prayer and action.
Exactly. You know, it should motivate you to act, and your action should motivate you to pray even more. Keep reinforcing both. You know, so at some point you got to do something and say something. Take the risk. Look, man, the resistance now. I mean, you got the military pulling back. You got the Yemens. You know, I mean, and the sustained resistance is causing this type of thing. They're rethinking their position. Right? And so, yeah.
So the worst thing you can do is to be apathetic, right? And to just not, your heart be numb to it. And then after that is to be silent when it's mandatory to actually speak up and do something if you have the capacity to do it.
Allah says, correct my pronunciation, Fasda bima tu'mar. Go public with this deen, this message. Right? I mean, so one of my favorite quotes by Arundhati Roy, once you see something, you can't unsee it. To be silent, to say nothing, is just as political an act as speaking out. Either way, you are accountable. So if I'm just as accountable for being, if my silence is making me just as accountable as speaking, I might as well go for broke. Put my trust in Allah. Literally, putting my trust. Allah, you say, you know, you tell the prophet, Ya ayyuhal muddaththir qum fa'anzir.
Stand up.
Right. You say, go public. You go, I'm going to do it. I'm going to trust you like you say that bird when it takes off from its nest. They're for certain they're coming back with sustenance. I'm going to surrender to you, Allah, because you say you never break your promise.
That's
and
amazing.
I'm going to keep on moving, period.
I think you answered the first question and the second question.
Alhamdulillah, that's good.
With one answer. May Allah accept from you and may He accept from all of us. Would definitely love to continue this conversation, but it has truly been a pleasure and a dream come true. You know, Yusuf said that you were one of his favorite players, right? And I'm going to say that you are one of my favorite players. Now, actually, you are my favorite player.
Alhamdulillah, thank you.
That being said.
And I'm going to say that you win because it ain't a tie. You kept saying who wins, you win. Because you conducted this whole, mashallah. So, thank you.
With that.
What happened?
I think he'll be around, inshallah. I know some of the young people want to know how to improve their game, inshallah, and all of those things.
You can ask him too.
It's so late, mashallah. And we have the camp in the morning. And so I'm going to close out proper, inshallah. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik. Wa ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant. Wa astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Jazakum Allahu khaira. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.